Thanks for being here for today's session entitled How to Turn Your Email Program into a Revenue Generating Machine. As I just mentioned, I'm Keith from FreshAddress. I'm joined today by Chris Donald, Managing Partner at InboxArmy, and Jim Tinney, the VP of Sales and Marketing at FreshAddress. And let's just take a quick look at today's agenda. We already went through the intros. We're looking at 5 different areas that can help really enhance your email marketing program: email list building, email list hygiene, email strategy, email automations and reporting. And just a quick housekeeping note on questions. Feel free to let them fly throughout the presentation. We'll try to field them in real time. If we're able to do so, we'll definitely make it happen. Otherwise, we'll have a Q&A session at the end of our presentation as well. And I'm just going to turn it over to Chris real quick, just to learn a little bit more about InboxArmy.
Sure. So I won't read this out, but InboxArmy is a full-service email marketing agency. We help clients from small businesses all the way up to major brands and enterprise-level clients. With everything. Mostly what we do is on the production side. So think of everything after strategy, although we do strategy for clients. Where we shine and really help clients is on the production side, meaning design, coding, testing, setup, QA, deployment, integrations, automations, right? So everything soup to nuts on the production side is where we help most of our clients.
Great. Thanks, Chris. Now we're going to turn it over to Jim for a little bit more about FreshAddress. Sorry, Jim.
Yep, a little introduction. FreshAddress, we're an email marketing intelligence company. We've been around for 21 years, celebrated our 21st year back in May of this year. We help our customers clean, protect, and grow their email data set. We work with over 2,500 clients, including 25% of the Fortune 100. And really what we're out to help you do is not only grow your database, but protect your email database, making sure that your emails are deliverable so that you don't run into any kind of issues with blacklisting or blocking. And of course, this leads to increasing overall ROI on your email marketing activities. And the way we do it, just with our experience, technology, and intellectual portfolio, we deliver the best in email validation services.
Thanks, Jim. All right, and now we're going to turn it back to Chris for the first section on email strategy.
Okay. So we are going to lean a little bit towards e-commerce on this call because we're coming into the holidays. E-commerce has just exploded this year with a lot more people buying online because it's just safer, right? So we will think about that, sort of lean towards that more. The main thing when it comes to strategy is defining your goals, right? And then to make a plan to how are we going to test and execute to reach those goals. But defining clear goals are really important because it's hard to create a strategy without a goal, right? It's kind of like going, I'm going to run a race, but I don't know where it ends. Doesn't make any sense, right? You need to figure out what are your goals, what are going to be, and they can be short goals. They don't have to be long-term goals. So you can have short goals. In fact, it's better to have milestones as you go. But define those goals, whether it be, increasing engagement, increasing list size, right? Building your list out. Because we know if your current program with your email sending on a month drives $50,000 worth of revenue to a list of, 100,000 or 200,000, then by increasing that list size, you can increase revenue. So list growth is super important, certainly. And the engagement, right? So having a big list that's unengaged is nowhere near as good as having a smaller list that is engaged, right? So don't be afraid to, and I don't say always cull people, but really pay attention to your actives versus your inactives. Keeping a high engagement rate is going to certainly help you with inbox placement. Inactives can be hygiened once in a while and you can still mail to them. Look at buying frequency. Sometimes people aren't active on email, but they are active buying from you. So look at those, don't just look at one set of data to decide if somebody's active or inactive with you. A lot of times we get asked about, should we offer incentives or not? Should we offer incentives to subscribe to help build the list? And in general, we suggest it's a good idea if profit margins can bear it. Also, if you know that if somebody buys from you once, if you know that the average person who buys once will also buy 3, 4, 5 times, then you know that is additional revenue coming, right? So a discount in the beginning can turn into more revenue down the line because they're going to purchase multiple times. And it's testing different levels of discount, right? So it's best to stay with round numbers, 10% off, 15% off, 20% off, 25% off, whatever. Just because people have a hard time with something like 13% off. We actually proved that out where we sent a split test with 13% off and 10% off, and the 10% off did better because I think people just do the math in their head easier. And it sounds silly, but unfortunately, it's the way people react to things. And testing is so important. Once you have a plan, it's how are you going to execute that? How are you going to test to improve? Whether it be A/B testing or multivariate testing, if you do A/B testing with a random split, you have to understand random is not random. So make sure that if you're going to do a split test, that you make those splits as equal as possible with actives and inactives or whatever you're going to do, but try to make them as equal so the list doesn't already tweak your results or you're not going to find out what you find. Also, A/B tests. If you only wait 4 hours, about 50% of the time, 24 hours later, the winner switches, right? So, and one test win does not say that it's going to happen every time. You need to repeat wins in order to go, okay, this is a trend. This is something that's working. One test with one win doesn't tell you that. And then you need to optimize and continue testing and be smart about it, right? Some people like holdout groups. I'm not a big fan of them. Certainly not during the holidays, because why would you lose that revenue? If you know that email drives more, why would you keep a holdout group a long time? It's fine to do it occasionally, but don't do it forever. And then evaluate your progress. Find the positive trends, exploit them, and just keep trying to move forward. Small incremental gains are great. If you hit a home run and have a big gain, that's wonderful, but generally small incremental gains is what's going to get you there.
Thanks, Chris. All right, now we're going to turn it over to Jim to talk a little bit about some tips for email list building.
Right, so a couple of things to think about when building out your email list. Number one, don't take shortcuts. It's going to be counterproductive to what you're trying to accomplish. So I say here, don't scrape or harvest email addresses. Why not? Well, the simple answer is it's illegal. You're sending emails to people that don't know you. You're not actually meeting the compliance of many of the regulations out there. They haven't given you permission. They don't want to hear from you. So just a couple of points there. And very high likelihood that if you're emailing to a scraped list, your spam complaints are going to go up. Not only that, more dangerous, it would be the number of spam traps and toxic email addresses that you might pick up through this practice, which will ultimately damage your sender reputation. Don't buy lists. Kind of the same reasons. Many of the list providers out there are using scraping technologies to build their email lists. So if you're going to do it, buy it from a very trusted source. But for the most part, we suggest that you don't. Most of these people don't want to hear from you. You don't have their permission to email them. So again, stay away from any lists, buying lists, and the like. Don't force people to sign up. So this is, I always find this one as an interesting topic. Reason why we say this is you want people to trust you first. So build some kind of rapport with your customer before you force them, or I won't even use the word force. You get them to give you your email address. If you're forcing them to give you your email address, you're actually going to increase the likelihood that they give you a bogus email address. And this will increase, the likelihood of many other issues that come with bogus email addresses, like spam complaints and high spam complainers. Don't ignore regulations in your market. It's not worth it. It could cost you a lot of money. And then if you're lucky enough to inherit a list from either an acquisition or whatnot, don't automatically just trust it. First thing I would do is validate that list, mostly because you don't know how old that list is. You don't know if these people have opted in, if they want to hear from you, if they know you. The origins are unknown. So you want to be very, very careful with any list that you might have inherited. So now that I've told you what not to do, what can you do as best practices? Well, number one, ask everywhere. So ask folks for their email addresses on every page on your website, during every phone call, on every paper order form. You should give a spot for an email address. Social media pages. So just make sure to ask everywhere, and then establish trust and value. Explain why you're asking them for the email address, what your intentions will be with that email address. Don't ask for more than what you need, and make sure you let them know that you're going to assure that their privacy is kept, that you're not going to sell their email address to some list provider or some third party without their knowledge. Optimize your forms. So if you think about, there's lots of room for human error when filling out a form. So think of, we have a number of customers where, say, a worker at a point of sale system is collecting an email address, and this person really does not care about the customer's email address. So we see a lot of I don't care at whydouyoumake-me-do-this.com, no at no.com, just so that they could fill in the field, but they really don't care about the accuracy. So train your employees, let them know, why you're collecting this stuff, why it's important. Online forms, just try to make it easy as possible for your visitors to provide the correct email address. One key thing to think about, make sure you leave enough room for some really long email addresses. There are people that have long email addresses, and if you limit it down to 24 characters, you might not get that person's real email address. For phone and point of sale, just make it easy for your employees to collect the information. Teach them to be comfortable with confirming the email address with the customer. And if you're having a customer write it down, we would suggest getting rid of the paper form and actually turning it into a electronic version, if at all possible. And then we talk about promptly sending a welcome email. Well, I would suggest first, before that, you validate all the emails you correct, because even with all these precautions, if you're not validating at the point of entry, you should at least validate before you deploy the welcome email to make sure that you're removing any bouncing or toxic email addresses from the list. Once you're sure that you have good email addresses, then absolutely deploy a welcome email. And set a quality standard, stick to it. Use real-time APIs if you have the ability to. There are plenty of there are tools out there that can help you. One of the things, and I'm going to talk about FreshAddress and SafeToSend here in a little bit, but you can turn typos into customer relationships. We have a technology that will correct a typo, anything from the @ sign to the right. So when someone inadvertently enters gmail.com, we will correct it for you as validating to gmail.com. So put as many tools in place through real-time APIs so that you're validating and correcting at the point of entry. And then lastly, evaluate the paid services out there. Evaluate the validation services, and then there's also products out there like FreshAddress has email change of address as well as email append, fully vetted email, 100% deliverable email addresses. So evaluate those services when you can.
Thanks, Jim. All right, I'm moving on to list time.
So just on list hygiene, number one, you want to make sure that you're emailing to quality email addresses. So you're going to want to know about deliverability. The email address doesn't bounce, and you want to make sure that an email is not going to bounce and it actually reaches an inbox. You want to make sure it's accurate. So if the email is deliverable, make sure it's connecting to the correct inbox, so the user that you intended the message to be delivered to. So in other words, if it connects to the intended, make sure it connects to the intended target. And then we suggest that you remove any kind of disposable role account type email addresses in order to identify or increase your email deliverability. So on top of that, you want to make sure you're able to identify any misspelled or typoed email, bogus, role accounts, or spam traps. And we'll talk to you a little bit about how you can do that. Make sure you're using a primary email address, one that people are still using. Most people have many more than one email address nowadays. So you want to validate that the email address they give you is still a working email address. And then have a proper validation in place. Poor email quality is going to cost your company money, and we talk to people every single day. Why would you waste money sending messages to people who aren't looking to engage with your messaging? Blocking and blacklisting. If you have bad email practices and that lead to blocking and blacklisting, the cost to recover from that is it's extensive and it takes a lot of time. So you really don't want to lead yourself into a blocking or blacklisting situation. And as if you think about it, you spend a lot of time and effort to collect these email addresses. You want to make sure you maximize that investment. So make sure that they're deliverable at the end. And many types of bad addresses can cause you problems. Typos, disposable, role accounts, spam traps, they're all bad news. They're all going to lead to you getting harming your sender reputation. And unlike postal mail, when you have an incorrect address for someone, it doesn't get returned to the post office. It doesn't sit there and be delivered to the current resident. If you have 5% of your email addresses that are bad, those 5% can actually impact greatly the deliverability of the other 95% of the email list you're trying to reach out to. So think about acquisition sources. Make sure you're protecting yourself. Make sure that you're collecting emails at point of sale, website, call centers, and putting the right tools in place to validate at each of those entry points. And then lastly, proper email hygiene will yield major results. So if you clean and correct in real time at the point of sale, website, and call center, you're going to increase the effectiveness of your email list. Keep the bad emails, the toxic emails, the harmful email addresses out of your database. And by doing this, it's going to increase the inbox placement and equal higher engagement and revenues from your email marketing efforts. And then suggested corrections. So as an email is being entered, if you can identify misspelled or a double dot or a double.com or a double @ sign, and those could be corrected, you can turn a misspelled or a typo or a mistake into a revenue generating email address. So just a couple of examples of email addresses. I think I've talked about all these. Problematic email addresses would be the spam traps, honeypots, those types of things. Invalid email accounts where the information is just entered incorrectly. Frequent spam complainers. These are folks that are going to hurt your sender reputation as the ISPs are monitoring the spam complaints that based on your sending domain. Typos could be actually a malicious email address or a spam trap, but if you correct those typos, it could be a revenue opportunity for you. Role accounts, be wary of those. Info at, sales at, those types of email accounts can hurt you, because as those email addresses are sent off to the 20 people that are within that role account, 18 of them may actually lodge a spam complaint, which would have a negative impact on you. And then, of course, bogus email addresses. So how do we help you? Well, FreshAddress has a product called SafeToSend. It's a validation, email validation service. And we do this through a 3-step process: check, protect, and correct. Number one, we're going to check to make sure that every email address in your database is a valid email and that it can actually reach an inbox. We're going to correct. So those that we are identifying errors within those email addresses, whether it be a spelling error, a double @ sign, syntax errors, things that I've mentioned before, we're going to correct those for you. Once we correct those, we actually then will revalidate and make sure that they are deliverable email addresses. So we're not just correcting and handing it off to you, and saying good luck. We're actually going to validate it after we've corrected. And then lastly, protect. We want to make sure we protect your email database. So many malicious emails are actually deliverable emails. They hit an inbox. They look like they're interacting with you. These are the spam traps, the honeypots. And these are the ones that are set up to actually damage your sender reputation, right? And you're being monitored and watched. And if you're hitting a lot of spam traps, that gets reported back to your ISP. And your ISP can actually start to blacklist or block you from sending email addresses. So we're going to remove the spam traps and malicious emails from your email database. And then lastly, we suggest that you put the validation at all the points of entry, real time if you can, at point of sale, at website, within the call center, setting up people with tools to actually validate as they enter the email address. And this will lead to 100% accurate and deliverable email addresses in your email database.
Thanks, Jim. Now we're going to turn it back to Chris for some commentary on email automations and reporting.
All right, so, and again, we're going to talk a little bit on the e-commerce side for this, right? So automations for most e-commerce companies are big revenue drivers, as they should be. Generally, your welcome message and your cart abandonment are two of your highest automations that drive revenue. And the welcome, especially with first-time buyer discounts, you'll see that on a lot of websites. Hey, subscribe and we'll 10% off your first purchase, or free shipping, or a free gift with your first purchase, whatever that incentive might be. So, and it's important that, you'll see some sites that you put in your address and they give you the code right away on the website. Not a fan of that, because some people will just put in any email address to get the code, right? So it's better to tell them in the sign up that you're going to send them the code by email. So they're going to be more apt to give you a correct email, and probably be more apt to be careful about making sure the email address is correct when they type it in, because they want that discount, right? And with that, because of them getting that discount, you can now track that code that says, hey, we made X amount of revenue from welcome because they used the code, this code. The only place this code is in the welcome message. Same for anything. So anytime you do any type of a discount in email, and particularly in automations, you will use a separate discount code. So you can track attribution back to that automation. And it might even be you use two different ones in a automation, because in a cart abandonment, you may offer, a 10% discount on the third email, but on the fifth email, you may offer a 15 or something like that. It just depends, right? So make sure you can sort of track back attribution as best as you can. And welcome messages can be a simple single one message welcome. We like multiples because we like to remind people, if they haven't used that code yet, if they haven't made a purchase, to let them know, hey, this code's still available for 10% off or 15% off. And that can help them come back and make that first purchase. Cart abandonment. This is something that's been a pet project of mine for years. Most card abandonment programs are broken. Most use sort of the default 3-message card abandonment, or some, if you're on a Shopify or something, there may be the default 1 message that's going out of Shopify. We usually suggest clients that your card abandonment message should come out of your ESP, whatever you're using, right? Keep all your data in one place so you can use that data when it gets mailed out of Shopify or some e-commerce platform. Unless you've integrated those and brought everything together, you're not going to have that usable data. So when it comes to card abandonment, one of the important things to remember is that standard card abandonment program that might be a 3-message where one goes out within an hour or 4 hours, and the next one 24 hours, and the next one 24 hours after that. So basically it's over in 48 hours. That's sort of been the default card abandonment program for many programs out there. We see it all the time. One thing that nobody takes into account for is when you have a 24-hour sale. So if you have a 24-hour sale, they're going to get a reminder to buy something, and the sale's not over, right? Because I mean, the sale's over by the time they get the second reminder to come back, and that can annoy people a little bit. The other thing you want to look at is rarely 3 messages is enough. On most of our clients, we run 5 messages at minimum. And one of the reasons we do that, or we run what's called a post card abandonment program. So what we've learned is if you have more than $250, $300 in your cart, you're more apt to abandon because you have questions, right? So you might have to talk to your husband or wife to go, hey, can I spend $300 on shoes? No, honey, you cannot do that. You know, whatever that might be, right? So, or you may just look for some more places to find better pricing maybe, or you might wait till you get your next paycheck. So once they have a larger checkout amount, really that $300 area or above, you've got 2 options. You can extend your card abandonment program to 5 message, maybe over 5-7 days, or create a post card abandonment program so that people, when they leave the regular card abandonment program, it says if cart value is $300 or more, push them, and haven't purchased, push them into the post card abandonment program. I do like the post card abandonment program having 2, so if you need to edit one or the other, you don't have to shut the whole thing down while you do it. But it's certainly something to test on your end. Really look at the card abandonment. And if you do run a lot of 24-hour sales, create a second card abandonment program that's really tweaked for that one 24-hour sale, and just switch between them during that time if you need to. Just remember to switch back. Some of the others that really help to drive revenue. I'm sorry, did you say something? Okay, I heard something in my ear here. Some of the other automations that will really work well are post-purchase, right? So post-purchase can be a thank you, and hey, here's other items that people who bought this, they also bought this, this, and this. Or it could be a next logical purchase type of post-purchase, right? So if you bought a phone, you might want to try to sell them a case and chargers and portable chargers or whatever, even external speakers, things like that. So post-purchase as a thank you, and as a, hey, here's some other products that you might like, because people who bought this also bought these things. Browse abandonment. Browse abandonment is a funny one. So you kind of need traffic for browse abandonment. So if you're kind of a small e-commerce business, not a lot of traffic yet, I wouldn't worry about browse abandonment right away, because it has a lower conversion rate, which means it's going to take it a while before it pays itself back and you actually start making money from it in most cases. Because the cost to set up a cart abandonment program for a company that has, 10,000 visitors a day compared to one that has 200 visitors a day, the work is almost the same. So the cost is not all that different. So make sure you have enough volume of traffic and then make that decision there, right? But browse abandonment can work for sure. Reorder emails, right? So if you sell something that has a 30-day lifespan, shampoos, lotions, potions, certain food items, things like that, send reminders to purchase in enough time so if they get that message and they order, they get it before they run out. So if it's a 30-day thing, you may want to start reminding them 20 days out, 20 days after they purchased, right? Or 18 days after they purchased, to remind them a couple of reminder emails so they can purchase and get it. Because what happens a lot of times with things like shampoos or whatever it might be, is they run out, and instead of buying it online, they need it. So they go buy it at the store, and they might try another brand and go, oh, I like this brand, and now you're toast, right? So the reorder one can be really valuable, not only at driving revenue, but retaining clients. And then there's the win back. So a win back is another one I think people make lots of mistakes on. So, you know, we look at actives as maybe being 90-day actives when it comes to email, opened, clicked, did something in the past 90 days. But it depends. If you're sending an email every day, then 90 days is too long to wait for a win back program, right? If you're sending an email every day and they haven't opened one after 30 days, something's wrong, right? So you want to treat them differently, obviously, at that point. So adjust your win back based on what you see is when people hit a certain mark of inactivity. What is that mark that we know that it's 17 days or 30 days or 40 days, that if they don't open or interact with us, then they tend to become completely inactive, right? Figure out what that day is and start a week before it or 2 weeks before it, right? Nothing wrong with starting a little early to keep them coming back, because the longer you wait to try to win them back, the harder it is to win them back. So just play around with that a little bit. And then all these automations that you set up, these are not Ronco rotisseries, right? You don't set them and forget them. And that's what too many clients do. So make sure that you're monitoring it on a weekly basis to make sure it's triggering properly, and on a monthly review basis to make sure that the content's correct, offers are good, branding is correct. Maybe you've had an update of your website or some branding update. Make sure those get updated. But also look at the reporting and go, okay, this automation has 5 emails, and 1 and 2 do really good, 3 does terrible, 4 and 5 do pretty good. Well, move 3 to 5 and then decide what you're going to change in it, right? So when you have emails in an automation that do really well and one that don't do really well, part of it might be timing, but part of it might be content. So look at the ones that are doing well and figure out what's in there that's making them do well. What are people interacting with? And try to repeat that without repeating the exact same content, right? So that same idea of content. You know, usually discount emails will have a higher engagement rate or click-through rate, certainly, because there's a discount in them. If you do offer a discount in an automation, make sure you remind them to use the discount if they didn't on the next email or the next couple emails, even if it's just a piece of content that's in there, they'll remind them. But you have to tweak. You know, for opens, you tweak time of day, day of send, subject line, right? From name. That's mostly what people decide on when they open emails. If it's click-throughs, it's content, offers, calls to action, design, all of those things, right? So just decide what it is, look at your reporting, look at your engagement numbers, and make your adjustments and your tweaks to get the optimal result. And I did already talk about using different codes for conversion tracking. It's really important. So conversion tracking, and I'm actually working with a group about talking about conversion tracking and value of email past conversions and clicks, right? Because we tend to talk about email as an open without a click has no value, right? So a lot of people go, open isn't a good measurement for anything. Yet all the other marketing channels say impressions are really important, and they sell that like crazy, right? So yeah, you didn't get a lot of clicks, but oh, those impressions are really important. Well, then the email impression should be just as important, and it probably is. And even emails that don't get open cause action, right? So we have that, what we call a nudge effect. So that's when you get an email, like you'll get an email from your insurance company in the subject line, it's time to pay your monthly statement or your monthly invoice, right? So you just go online to your bank and you pay it. You never open the email, but the email did its job and you never opened it. I occasionally get emails from Costco. I go to Costco a lot. I'll get an email. I won't open the email, but I'll go, you know what? I need dog food. I need laundry detergent. I need the things I buy there, and I'll go to Costco. And that email reminded me to do that, and I didn't open it. So not only conversions, but look at what impact it might be having. Anyway, that's it for the automation side, I think. On to reporting. I love that question. Are open rates important? We love to say they're not, right? Isn't that true, Jim and Keith? Isn't it? It really is, right?
Absolutely.
I think that's wrong, right? I really do think it's wrong. Because you could open it up and look and go, and especially if you have brick and mortar, right? So you have brick and mortar and online, they could look at it and go, oh, these are cool, but you know what? I'm going to be at this store anyway. I'm going to look for it there, right? Or they may tell a friend of theirs, hey, you shop at Costco, look, there's this on sale, right? I mean, there's all kinds of ways that could influence a purchase or an action. Just because they didn't click doesn't mean that open doesn't have value, right? Now, does it have value for proving out something exactly? No, but it has the same amount of value that guy who sells you display ads and all the other stuff that says impressions are important and you believe them and you spend money on them. If you believe that, then you have to believe an email open has value, right? So open rates are clearly important to a point. Do they tell you a lot? Well, they tell you whether your timing was good, day of send was good, subject line was good, right? Open rates increased because of really good subject lines. So there's some benefit when you're looking at stuff like that. But we all tend to look at the click to open rate, right? And that is the one to look at for sure. Because it tells you that what you put in front of the person, they found valuable enough to make that click. They decided that whether it was finished reading an article or getting to a sale or looking at a product or watching a video, listening to a podcast, they took an action. And that's email's job, is to get people to take an action. It's to get them to move from the inbox to where we want them to go. We can't necessarily always sell them something in the inbox, but we can get them to go to where they can. So click to open rate is really important. And that comes down to content. It comes down to layout, it comes down to design. It comes down to offer, it comes down to discounts, everything to the graphic of the image that you're selling. You know, it needs to look good. Or the synopsis of the content needs to be really, really enticing to grab your attention, to want to read the rest of that article. And it also tells you, once you get all that data, it tells you what's important to your audience. What are they clicking on? What aren't they clicking on is just as important. So if you're a publisher with content, you know, these content got lots of clicks, these don't. This type of content never gets a good click. We should stop creating it, stop wasting time on it, and create more of the stuff that they want. Same thing when it comes to products. Certain products get lots of traffic, other products don't. If you have products that consistently don't get clicks, replace them with other products, test other products. Or if you're trying to sell those products, make sure you put them up top, because clicks generally get more at the top and get less as you go down the email, because people don't always scroll completely. They're always going to focus what they see first. So if you're trying to sell something that doesn't normally get a lot of clicks, give it a good discount, move it to the top. And that's what the content and calls to actions, that's why that's important, to understand what people want. And it's best to give them what they want. You'll keep them happy. The day and time of send, we talk about this a lot. So you may have been in that process where, oh, we always send on Tuesdays, especially businesses, right? So B2B emails, I hear it all the time. So we send Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, because Monday people are too busy, Friday they're halfway out the door, and weekends suck, right? That's what everybody says. Well, believe it or not, that's really wrong, right? So we see Mondays do really well. We see Saturdays do exceptionally well, especially now during this time, but even before COVID. What we found with Saturdays was open rates stayed about the same, sometimes dropped 1% or 2%, but click-throughs were much higher. And what we ended up finding out was people, especially business people that are busy during the week, have a little more time on the weekend to actually click and look at, read something or do something that they don't have time to do during the week. So test Saturdays if you're a B2B guy, right? A B2B person. Try Saturdays. It's worth trying. But try different days of the week and try different times. You know, we have a client that does extremely well. They send their email at like 3 o'clock in the morning, and we're like, this is such a bad time to send the email, right? A B2B email, because it's going to be buried under all the other crap that comes in during 3 a.m. to whenever they decide to open their emails. But we tested it, and it works for them. It's crazy. It's just something I would not have thought would have worked, but them it does. But in general, you want to send the email after they've opened their initial stuff, B2B on the B2B side, right? So you want to send it after, so 10 a.m., 11 a.m. their time, something new, even right after lunch can work. But test it. It's hard to tell, right? Everybody's list responds differently. For consumers, it's kind of wide open because everybody's home all day. So they all have where at work, they might check their email a few times, but at home, they're checking their email all day long. So it's probably a little bit more wide open, but it's worth testing. And also look at the device use they open. So if you have a high open rate on mobile devices, make sure that mobile experience both, excuse me, both in the email client or in their mobile phone and the website, right? So if your emails render and they're responsive, they look great on mobile, but they go to a website that isn't very mobile friendly, that's going to cause you problems. So understand what devices people are using. Are they mostly using desktop? Are they tablets? Are they mobile phones? In most cases, mobile phones are 50% or more of open rates nowadays. Some businesses, it's less, it's more desktop, but take a look at that. Then true conversion attribution and the nudge effect. I talked about that a little bit before. You know, conversion is always difficult. Make sure you have good tracking, because conversion tracking and getting attribution for your channel is important in order to get budget if you want to do more with your channel, right? So making sure you get attribution for the sales that email is driving is hyper important, not only to let whoever you're working for, whether it's yourself or someone else, that it's working and doing really well and driving all of this revenue. But if it is doing that and you want to get some extra money to do more automations or more testing or hire an additional person to help with production or use an agency, you need to show the C-suite dollars, right? You need to show them how much you're already attributing to your email channel, and how if you do these things, you can help either reduce man hours or increase revenues or increase customer retention. Don't tell them how you're going to do it when you talk to the C-suite, because they don't care and it's just going to make their head hurt. Talk about dollars, talk about value, talk about revenue, talk about customer acquisition and retention, things that they can understand. And inactive doesn't always mean inactive. So again, we talk about this, and it's a good time of year to talk about it. There are a few sites that I only shop on during the holidays, but I do every holiday. And if you go by what a lot of people say, which is, well, if they're inactive after 6 months and haven't opened an email, you should get rid of them. Well, no, you shouldn't. You should look back and go, what is their history of purchasing, right? Do they only purchase during certain times of the year? And you may want to reduce sending to them during the other parts of the year, but you still want to keep them, because come Christmas, they're going to buy again, right? And I'm going to go back to those sites that I never open emails all year long, and now I'm going to go back and I'm actually going to look for their emails, and I purposely look at my spam folder because I haven't interacted with them. That's where they are now, because that's what Gmail does. It says, oh, you stopped opening these emails for 3 months. I'm going to put them in the spam folder. So I have to go look for those deals now there. But and inactive in email doesn't mean they're inactive in buying from you or even being active on your site, reading content. Look at the multiple touch points, track them through multiple ways, understand that it shouldn't be an email only decision what's active and inactive, especially on the e-commerce side.
Hey, Chris, one quick question for you. So how long inactive would you wait until you maybe revalidate that email? Like, we suggest that there's a certain period of time where you probably want to validate that email before you reach back out to them again.
Well, we tell people they should touch everybody on their list, even the inactives, once a month, right? And if you touch them once a month, you're going to pick up the bounces and the things and pretty much like that, right? But, also it costs a lot of money to do that, especially if you have a large list. So if you want to let them go inactive for longer than that, right now, especially on the B2B side, we're saying if you haven't emailed them in 60 days, you need to hygiene that list, right? Because people are getting laid off, they're getting fired, they're moving jobs. I mean, it's a train wreck on the B2B side, as I'm sure you guys have seen, right?
Right.
We see it across the board with our B2B clients, deliverability and bounces and soft bounces turning into hard bounces because the mailboxes are full, right? Because the guy's gone and nobody's monitoring it, right?
Right.
So B2B, we say if you haven't actively sent to them in 60 days, it needs to be cleaned. On the consumer side, because consumers don't change their email addresses quite as often, as long as you touch them and you've gotten some sort of activity from them in 90 days. But if you've been sending and haven't, it's probably worth cleaning because it could be an abandoned address.
Right.
And understand ESPs also, their bounce reporting and all that stuff is not perfect, right? Sometimes you don't get bounce reporting from them that you should get, right? And not all of them treat soft bounces the same way to eventually turn them into a hard bounce. So, if something soft bounced once or twice, I would start to look at going, okay, let's move it out and then we can hygiene these the next month before we send or something, right? Because some of them don't mark it as a hard bounce for longer than 3. Some want it 3 times in a row within X amount of days or 30 days. But if you only send twice a month, then you're never going to get there, right? You're never going to have that, bounce 3 times within that time period. So understand how your ESP manages bounces. It could be that you need to do hygiene more often, right? Because of who you use. Unfortunately, it's just a case. And they're not all, nobody's perfect, right? And understand also hygiene, for the most case, isn't perfect either, right? You're probably going to get 98, 99%. When you do that first send, to a list that's been hygiene, you might still get a few bounces. And that might be because from the time you cleaned it to the time you sent it, things happened, right? So if you do hygiene a list, I would say send to it as quickly as you can, right? Don't wait 2 weeks and send it, because in this atmosphere, 2 weeks, especially on the B2B side.
We 100% agree with that.
Yeah. You guys have seen that too, right? On the B2B side now?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. So I think, where are we? The resources and budget. I'll try to run through this really quickly because we are running a little long here, it looks like. And that's probably because of me yapping away. So budgets and resources. Email marketers tend to not get the budgets they need. This is so true. We hear about it all the time because the C-suite and everybody else thinks email's easy. I can send an email. It can't be that hard. And look at all the revenue you're making when you don't even have a budget, right? So that's the problem. Is we can still do really well without a budget. And that's the problem. And it's not that you shouldn't keep trying. Don't get me wrong. But so when you ask for more budget and resources, show them, your KPI, show them the revenue, show them that, right? Don't talk about clicks and opens and technology. Talk about revenue. Talk about the value created. And test and prove what you want to do before you go asking for the money, right? So do a test, prove it out, and say, hey, if we build out these automations, we've tested this, that we believe we can create, increase revenue 10% or 8% or whatever that might be. And so you have proof to back it up. You can show them, here's the test we did and here's what the money it made. And also show how email delivers more revenue, right, than the dollar spent. Show them your multiplier. Hey, we spent X amount and we made this amount. Let's spend some more. Let's be a little more aggressive. Let's set up more automations. Let's do whatever we need to do and drive that additional revenue. The other trick is ask for 50 to 100% more than you want, right? So if you want, $20,000 more in your budget, ask for 40, right? They may go, are you crazy? We're only giving you 20. And then you say, thank you. And now you get the budget you wanted, right? So, because they're never going to give you what you want in most cases. And if they give you the extra, great, find a way to use it, right? There's ways to improve your program past what you were going to ask for, because we're always sort of set up to ask for less, right? We're afraid to ask for it. Don't be afraid to ask for budget. Don't keep working with bare bones. Explain to them the value you have and bring to the table and the revenue you drive for your company. Okay, try to keep that.